Okay, welcome to the locating MDX brief for this year. So we do one a year, and this year we're doing it post-SARX, just because we ran out of time pre-SARX to do so. Benefit of that is we can have a look at what we had done in the SARX itself and discuss a few other options with remote sensing and so forth that we just started using at the 2016 SARX. So today we're going to break it down into two parts. In the past, our first brief was basically to give everything a rattle, and from a technical aspect, because there was a lot of strong thoughts out there, and we were saying, look, let's have a look at this again. So we're trying to shake the tree a bit. Last year was just a flow on of technical stuff that we've been doing, and this year we're going to break it down into two parts. So just a general overview in part one, okay, and it was more designed for members that have just joined BWRS or other squads that are joining the search for MDX, just to give you a very quick rundown. And part two will be just a focus on some technical aspects, and the reason why it's in that order is that if the technical side bores you, you may egress safely and save your sanity. So this is something we always put up because we seem to, we just want to offer clarification. So what is BWRS's position to MDX? Okay, first and foremost, it's just to complete the original mission, which we started in '81.
It's already done. It's already done.
Yeah.
You give a sign and I do it.
No, that's okay. I'll take another. Thank you. That second point is something we always harp on, and we're slowly getting the message out there. So we don't want to get drawn into the political stuff. Okay, we're not interested in the legal self-interest-based activities. We're getting there, and I had one instance last year or this year. And the last one's important as well. So we're trying to actually proliferate the most accurate information we can of MDX. Because there is a lot of incorrect information out there, a lot of Chinese whispers, a lot of incorrect information. What is MDX? So it was a single-engine light aircraft, piston engine. It's travelling from Queensland and Proserpine to Bankstown via a stop in Coolangatta. In Coolangatta it refueled, and it was going to cover the Coolangatta to Bankstown leg in one hit. 9th of August '81, there were 5 people on board, including the pilot. It disappeared without a trace, so nothing at all. And the location is within or near the Barrington Wilderness area. Okay, always we'll keep our minds open. It could be somewhere near the Barrington Wilderness area and not within. Obviously, BWRS was involved from the first search.
Aren't you lucky?
Its planned flight tracks were from Taree to an intersection at Craven. Craven, not the township, so that's one thing we've been trying to correct. A lot of people have been searching reference to Craven. It's not Craven Township, it's Craven Waypoint, and what that means, it's just an intersection of 2 radio navigation aids. There's nothing underneath. All there is, there's trees, there's nothing else. There's no radio towers, it's just a position defined by 2 bearings, yeah? Hi, sorry. Thanks, yeah. From there, Singleton NDB, non-directional beacon, okay? And then from there, down to Mount McCoy, and then Hawkes into Bankstown. Mount McCoy's another, well, it's a mountain obviously, but it has a radio navigation aid. So there was a beacon here, there was a beacon there was not one there. So to define that position, he had to take a cut of the instruments between various combinations of those beacons and others actually, without going into detail. West Maitland. That was what he planned, and that was to go around the Williamtown airspace, which was active that night. There were many an aircraft that went through Williamtown airspace that night, okay, and he was certainly offered that clearance. There was an aircraft under 10 minutes in front of him that actually sailed down straight over Williamtown, and a civil aircraft, they got a clearance and sailed through. So there was no problem with obtaining clearances that night. It could be done. What happened here is that the pilot was offered a clearance through there by Sydney Flight Service. So they're not air traffic control, they're just a flight service, so they're there to help. When he got to Taree, MDX, the flight service guy said, would you like to go through Williamtown? Sure, I'll take that. Okay, stand by and I'll get you a clearance. And what had happened was that Williamtown said yes straight up, but Sydney wasn't sure, because when he exits Williamtown airspace, he'll enter Sydney controlled airspace. And the issue was that Sydney was not confident that the weather was such to allow him to fly to visual flight rules, okay? Okay, so everyone was doing their job. There's been a lot of stories about no clearances, everyone was doing their job, there was no issue there. So from that, the pilot was faced with the decision, waiting for the clearance or to turn inland. He still had a bit of time to run before he hit controlled airspace. But instead of doing that and tracking towards the controlled airspace, waiting for the clearance and tracking towards controlled airspace, he decided to track inland, and that's the blue arrows that you see. And this position here near Nabiac, we're not sure of, but that's roughly, most people concur that have researched this accident, that somewhere around there, he's turned inland to say, okay, I'm giving this up, I don't want to wait anymore, I don't want to legally hit controlled airspace, even though he did have a bit of time there. I'm going back to my original plan, okay? The green arrows. So he was trying to go for here. But it appears through some reports and so forth, visual sightings, that he's come up on the north side here, and he's definitely ended up at this initial Sydney fix here. So we know he's ended up there. Now that has been verified as best as we can. We don't believe that that was a misidentification on the air traffic control's part, if that was the question you had in your head. So he's ended up over here. There's various theories to suggest why he did that. We're not going to go into that tonight. You can look on our website. There's any number of theories. The important thing that matters is he ended up there. Following that initial fix, there was a turn towards the south and then a slow turn towards the east, and the arrow does not reflect his exact location at the moment necessarily. It's just he's gone somewhere to the east and ended up near or within the Barrington Ranges. Yeah. So this is the big question. Why wasn't it found in 1981? Yeah. And that's Frank, yeah, that's me taking the photo. Well, that's the obvious topography, and you can see from that photo alone, and that's not a bad photo, actually. There's nice, pleasant, open country there, relatively speaking. So the topography is such that it's not really conducive to searching from the air and from the land, on the ground as well. The terrain is steep, there is very thick vegetation, it is difficult. But also, there were errors in the base information and data, and I certainly believe that, and I think there's enough evidence to suggest that. These things happen. It's not really pointing a finger at anyone. But the way the information was obtained and verified can be, yeah, it is indicative that information was and data was not obtained as correctly as it could have, and also the interpretation of the radar fixes. And what I mean by that is we're talking about multi-agency here. We're talking about a RAF radar, we're talking about a Department of Transport radar, civilian one. When you're looking at big organisations, I still see it every day, or almost every day, you guys know what I'm talking about. These things are just inherent in these systems. It's not a fault of it, it just happens sometimes. Big systems require good, strong communications. Sometimes it doesn't work out. I've done the wrong thing, well not wrong thing, you know, we all made errors, I've done it. These things happen. And you can see when you're dealing within sections of a large organisation or between two large organisations, there can be communication errors, there can be issues in passing of information. Yeah. So these are the main two factors, but just keep in mind that back in 1981, they actually had, the Department of Transport that is, had some very smart fellas working on this, okay? So that does raise the question, where is it and why hasn't it been found? But the fact that it hasn't been found since 81, I don't think is topography alone. If we had a strong sense of where it was on the radar, or we had a definite position, you would be able to dead reckon plot, even though the radar fade height would be quite high, you would be able to find that aircraft a lot quicker than 30 plus years. So despite them putting in the best effort they did, which they did, and they had good guys, like I said, there was some sort of mix up there, and like I said, these things happen. Yeah. So why search for the aircraft? There's a number of reasons. There's some of ours. Okay, the first one is the big one. It's an excellent project that we can offer a closure possibly to families and friends, and I hope we can. Yeah, in time we will, but how long that time frame will be, at least we're trying. Yeah. The third point is one thing I'm always pushing. So it's more than just looking for an aircraft. It is an absolutely excellent remote search activity for our emergency services, yeah? And we need to learn more from it, right? So if I'm managing it this year, there'll be more learning outcomes, there'll be more things to throw back into the system to strengthen our emergency services. We're not just going up there to look for an aircraft. We're also there to tick a few boxes, yeah? And you can tick some big boxes within this environment, yeah? It's, yeah, the challenges it offers is huge and good outcomes. And then you have all the other reasons you can think of. This is my thought. These are my thoughts on where we were pre-2014. So I joined in 2014, and I guess I went in and went, wow, it's a bit of a mess from a organisational point of view. I didn't think the research was done that correctly, deeply enough, and getting down to the base sources. I don't think the right questions are asked.
Quick question.
Sure.
The radar information, how is that presented to you? Is that just a written log?
What's that? The
radar information.
Oh, radar.
Yeah, just if you go to the library, Mitchell Library or something, I don't know where it is stored. How is it presented? Just printed form or tapes or?
Yeah, actually I'll go through that in 2 slides from now.
Oh,
yep, I remember that. These are my thoughts only. They're not representing the squad, so if someone wants to come after me, they can. But what do we do about this? So actually the whole idea was to formalise it more and just run it like a proper research task and a proper search task, just as if the incident occurred yesterday, with the best ability that we can as volunteers. Yeah, keeping in mind that we actually have a pool of professionals and so forth that we can call on within our unit. It's pretty amazing.
Therefore is the expression amateur, because amateurs, lots of scientists were amateurs who are better as the professors at the university.
Yeah,
and still happen.
And that's right. And I guess the main thing is that you can't. It's also about coordination. It's not, you can't have people sort of going a bit here and a bit there and all over the shop. So it's about bringing it all together and taking the correct path, whichever way that might be. And what I did was present a concept of operations to police rescue and also internally. Not that we really needed that, but a progressive iterative. So this is a big word. The iteration in this will drive people nuts. So, we publish a paper, then we're always changing it, right? Because we're getting information, and we won't stop looking until it's found, right? Or until we pass it on to someone else. I just think of it as a funnel, and we're falling down the funnel, yeah? And it's just getting tighter and tighter. You can't sort of stop. You've got to keep looking and keep reanalyzing it and stop, take a break, have another look at it, have a look at the way you've interpreted that, get someone else to do it. That's what we've been doing, and I think time will tell that that would have been the right approach. So this is a big one because I didn't feel that the base information and data was robust enough. So there was a lot of Chinese whispers and a lot of this was said and this was done, and the conspiracy theories were amazing.
Yeah.
That's a big one too, to unfreeze previous conclusions and so forth. That's big for all of us. We all suffer from target focus, and we need to do that. And instead of looking at information, and I guess most have done this, including police in the past, look at information and say, well, there was a radar fix there, and then we saw someone here, so it must be here. Instead of looking at that and saying that's in that area, small area, relatively speaking, we've gone and said, look, I don't think that's the best way to do it. We need to look at this in probability areas, okay? Mm-hmm. That way you can actually channel the information you get as well, so it's hearing, sighting reports, other information, sort of look at it and go, well, that looks yeah, that looks okay, and that doesn't, and we'll apply this many resources, you know, if it's further down the funnel, so to speak, yeah? So that's what we set out to do, and that's what we've done, okay? So a multi-area approach rather than just saying, you know, X marks the spot, because it just doesn't cut it, yeah? I know Glenn was involved, you were involved in stochastic type area analyses beforehand, but the information getting fed to Glenn was, you know, questionable. And that's what we wanted to say. Let's get this base information, not from the mate, the mate and the mate and the mate. Let's get it as close to the horse's mouth as possible. That has been a headache, but it, again, I think we'll find in time that it'll prove worthy. So the multiple area approach, we'll cover it in a moment, but it confuses some, but you just got to think of it basically. And this is where we are now. I'm not going to read through all those points and bore you, but going back to what Jan was asking with the information with our radar fixes, it's interesting because there's any number of different sources. So we have information that's archived. In fact, I think I've reviewed, I think it's over 60 files now that we've located. Yeah, I'll tell you, National Archives Australia has been excellent. They've given us all their support they can. And a couple of key players there, Judith Patterson is just fantastic as a research officer. So she's sorted out a lot of our looking through catalogues. I don't know if you guys understand how the National Archives work. They're only a small percentage, single-digit percentage of all their files are in a catalogue, on the electronic catalogue anyway. The rest is all about manual sifting, okay? And so I spent so much time in there, but if I didn't have their support, okay, it would just be incredibly hard. But because of this, we've uncovered a lot of solid files with the radar data. Other people have volunteered it, so they've had copies from 81 that they've given us. And it's in a narrative form, so it could be written like this: disappeared at 330.45 from Williamtown, for instance, the bearing and range. Or in the case that you've probably all seen, and you'll see in a moment, it can be in a radar plot sheet, okay? There's also word of mouth from controllers themselves, okay? Combination of sources. And indeed, if we can get a hold of any of the controllers or people directly involved, or even someone that's closely associated with, we'll, even if we have the paper information, we'll have another look at it and talk about the whole thing verbally. Has been 30 years, so that is a problem. I mean, you know, but some things you never forget. Yeah? Hard balance for us, 30-something years plus. But we do mix all as much as we can. We're trying to get down to that base level of information. So yes, and yeah, I'll iterate again. National Archives have just been absolutely fantastic. Well, I can't praise them enough. I even know when the coffee truck arrives there, what time. Sad. That's one of the points that we mentioned was proliferation of information. Okay, and we've started the website. It's at that web address there. It's been excellent, again, just to get the message out, the right message, but also the Contact Us feature to bring information in, and that's been working well. And we've been getting all sorts of different things. We're also getting Google Earth sightings and so forth. People are adamant that they've seen it there. So we filter all those out as well. Either we can rule them out because we've had search parties there, or other private searches. Now that we've got a good relationship with other searchers, and that was problematic in the past. I don't know if everyone's aware. Everyone's doing their own little thing. We're trying to break that down and say, well, what's the point? I mean, the reality is you're not going to find it by yourself. So, you know, if we pull the information in, we can achieve that outcome. So we can rule out sightings in that way, or if they look worthy enough in the correct area, we'll go and investigate them. But that's been an excellent resource, and all our research documents are on there, and frequently asked questions, you name it. We've also got an online map feature we've just activated though. So that's working. It's not populated with many search tracks yet though. This is a big job. So if you click in there now, you'll see GPS search tracks. Okay, only a very small selection of what we got. I think by February next year we'll have a lot, quite a few, and we'll also have areas that have had activity in them, and that goes back to what I was saying in 81, for instance, when there was no GPS used on land search, where areas were searched. We'll put those areas in with a note saying there was activity in there, we just don't know where everyone's been. So at least now we'll have the first picture ever, really, of where everyone's searched. Okay, so we've actually we've located the file reference for the original search maps, but they've been destroyed. So we've had that confirmed as well. So that was from the original 81 searches, unfortunately. How does it help? All this approach that we're taking, okay? And like I said, it's not only about researching the right information, it's about command coordination, control, communication, having good relationships with everyone. We work pretty closely with landowners in the area as well. We help them as much as we can as well. You know, we look after their land, right, and they look after us. So it's not as simple as going out there and searching. We work closely with them. We make sure everyone's on side because we want mutual benefit out of it anyway. But we just want to do the right thing as well. We don't want to go out there and litter someone's land or rip up their tracks. And if we can help out, we always try with anything that we can. But basically, the purer the information source and the closer it is to that original source, you know, the better assumptions we can make, because you'll always have to make assumptions. But the closer you get to that source, the more accurate it'll be. A stronger corroboration of all the information, which means it pushes you into an area. You can make more defensible assumptions, as I said, and then that means more defensible search areas. Yeah, so where you're searching is, you know, more defensible. You know, it's not just bang, bang, one piece of information, I'll add a few more and go off. And a truly coordinated search effort, and what I mean by that is, you know, we can coordinate the services and also any other groups. Not that we want to coordinate external groups, but we can see where they're searching. If they're providing us providing their tracks, GPS tracks, we can put them on the map and we can deconflict, I guess, and work together rather than working on top of each other, which has been happening for decades. How has all this approach changed the focus area? So back in 2013, and I think that was the first major one, most of the activity, so 2013 we were focused on the Williams River, Upper Williams near Carey's Peak. In the past, many searches have been in the Williams and Allen, okay? There's been heavy concentration in these areas because of a certain radar fix, a Williamtown radar fix. So naturally that'll draw you there, which makes perfect sense. So that's where most activity has been. Mount Patterson as well, same radar fix, but a different definition, someone's plotted it differently, all these sort of reasons. So most activity has been down here. There has been a little bit of activity, there has been in Chichester, Upper Chichester, and also in the Whispering Gully. So there has been. But most of the official activity has been in this area down here, okay? What the information has driven us to do is to shift at this stage 10 to 20 kilometres from these traditional areas over towards the Gloucester River Valley. Okay, when I say Gloucester River Valley, I really mean well north and well south of it as well, so up to the Kerripit and also down to the Whispering Gully. Okay, we can't rule those areas out, they're all areas of interest. So that's where the information has taken us, okay, towards the east from the traditional areas. Talking about activity in the east, there is Donald Redford's group. They're searching up here on Scattered Top Mountain. Okay, so they were always out to the northeast, and there were searches, like I said, of the army down here in our area of interest, south of it, but still in it, south of the main area, down in the Whispering Gully. There was also a BWS team in that area in the 90s, and Mount Nelson area. So I know when I say this, you're saying, hang on, we've had some activity there. We have, but we never really had it in the Gloucester River Valley, nor in the north side up to the Kerripit or Sharps and all that sort of stuff. So that's all been fairly new, but the main activity was out here. And this is where the information, at the moment, has led us. And we'll happily go back there again if the information takes us. But at the moment, it's quite, it's pushing us to the east. The three area approach I was talking about is shown here really, and we have a big boundary, which is the maximum possible extent. So what we've done there, we've looked at the aircraft in a dive situation at maximum ridiculous airspeeds, the maximum possible basically, and even the time frames are blown out to when the radio transmissions were from an airborne aircraft were not received, which is like 12 seconds or plus later, so it's quite significant. And the radar fix had a big display on it, so we used, there was a particular fix there, the 320 at 45 from Williamtown, and what we've done on that is put plus or minus 10 degrees, and I think it was plus or minus 5 nautical miles. You know, it's quite a huge area, and then we've gone off that and projected in every way. So that should capture pretty much every scenario of MDX, we would think. Okay, it's highly likely that it's within that, almost to the point that it is within that circle. Okay, the only exception to that would be if it flew on, but there's reasons why we don't believe that to be the case, and I think they're quite valid. The next area down is the most likely extent. So that's an extent, how far it can go, yeah? How far it can go. The next one down is the most likely extent, so not the maximum possible, but the most likely. And that's now using parameters that are most likely, oddly enough. So it's using another radar fix that was, at the time, was sceptical whether that existed or not, but now we're slowly finding information that suggests that yes, it does, and we're using that. And it's actually tightened in on the speed, so the speeds are more realistic to cover an aircraft that is iced up. So when an aircraft gathers ice, it slows down if it gathers enough ice. And
Does he think it was iced up?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, he reported it twice. So the pilot, the pilot reported accumulating ice twice.
Okay.
And I would say in that area, in that type of cloud, in those conditions, there would be a significant amount of ice. Yeah. So this boundary, this extent boundary, again, it's how far it uses. So it's how far. Yeah. It's not about the aircraft being more on that line than in the middle here. It's just an extent. So somewhere in there, that's where we likely think it is. We know it's pretty much definitely in the red, but in the green, most likely at the moment with the research. So the speeds are tightened up, the radar fix is tightened up. We take a little bit more risk in the assumptions, yeah. And really, that's the main area that we use, actually. More so than even the most probable area, which I'll go through now. But it's really the one that's, I think, showing you somewhere in there is the aircraft. Quite big though. And then we've got the most probable area, which is those three little eggs joined together. And what you've got to remember is none of these boundaries are hard either. Always think of them as fuzz. Yeah? So these show contours. You can see the different colours, just probability contours. But the reality is they go to infinity. And really, we're probably interested a fair bit more out here. But it gives us a target for our major searches. At the moment, that's the best assumption. But you'll see later that we still have activity north and south of it. Right? We're still covering areas north and south. So we'll go through that in part 2. So that most likely extent is 644 square k's. So it's quite significant. You can see that you can't search that in a hurry.
And those probabilities are defined by the topography as well, and the altitude of the aircraft and the topography.
No, actually, no, these aren't. These are...
So that just ignores the topography?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I can see what you're saying. If you... Considering topography is probably not the most applicable thing in this case, because we're not looking at it hitting... You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's
and in fact, I'll explain that later on as on the text section. You'll see why the radar fade, the aircraft is quite high at radar fade, above the topography, above the land. So, and then it faded from radio communications, even though most areas that we've had a look at, he was able to communicate reasonably low. So there's a strong suggestion there, unless he's had a radio failure, which is probably unlikely in that case, possible. But given the tempo of the communications and so forth, it appears that the aircraft's departed flight, so it's lost control, or in-flight breakup, something along those lines. So that's why it's not really, we don't really consider it. 644 square k's, which is a huge area, you know. But if you consider just the remote areas, so you take out all the farmland, all the areas of human activity, it's about 455 square k's. Okay. Right. Huge, yeah. So that's looking at, again, the aircraft going to a maximum extent. Okay. So these are all guides. Again, you can't just search that area. We know that. So but we need something to start breaking it down and having. We can't fabricate it. You cannot fabricate these things. You just got to look at it and you've got to work with it intelligently. Yeah. So about 455 with the in the remote areas only. The most probable area is currently 17 square kilometres. Yeah, that's a bit better, isn't it? A bit. But when you consider in the 2015 SAREX, we covered with 5 teams of 5 to 6, 2.8 square k's, something like that. I'll leave you with the maths. And not only that, on top of that, the reality is our unpublished area that we were interested in is about 80 square kilometres based on that MPA. So really, it projects something like this, yeah, not too far out, maybe like that. Okay, and that's really where the money is at the moment. How do we use these areas? So we've got all these areas. Great, isn't it great to have all these areas? And that's the flow chart that we use. Okay, and it's relating to reports. We're specifically talking about considering reports of MDX impact. So what that means is if someone brings it up and says, we've got a Google Earth image and I can see a wing, and we get that a fair bit, we go, okay, where is it? Is it inside the maximum possible extent, the red boundary? No. Okay, we just don't look at it unless it's on the fringe. Of course we'll look at it on the fringe. But if it looks suspect, it might be something else that's, you know, worthy. So we'll refer it to the police anyway. But for us, it ends there. If it's inside, it is of interest. Okay. Is it inside the most likely extent, the green boundary? No. It's unlikely to be MDX. Okay. But we're still going to possibly commit limited resources. We just know that, you know, we'll have a look at it and go, well, you know, on the balance, no. I'll tell you a recent event. We have a report that is outside of this boundary, so it fits this criteria. No. Okay. And when you look at the image, it's actually quite convincingly, it's something that we need to check, isn't it? It's fair to say, the image on. Yeah. It's, you know, you look at it and you go, yeah, we're just going to have to go there. We know it's going to be more than likely a tree. We know that. That's the highest probability. But it just looks so right. So we've got to do it. It's out of this area, it's in this one, but the image is such that we will commit our limited resources to look at it. It is worth looking at. Okay, so we don't turn our backs on the other areas. If we're outside of this area, for instance, because our information interpretation might be incorrect. Yeah. So if it's outside the red one, that's our safety net. But certainly in here, if the information is convincing, and if we had someone ring up out here and saying, look, I didn't want to tell the police or whatever back in '81, but I seen an aircraft flying this high, you know, bang, you know, I heard an explosion. Of course we would look at it if we were sitting here. Yeah. So it's that balance of, we needed some sort of flow chart to balance this and to make it a little bit more formalised rather than just plucking and, you know, because there were reactions up here, more so from the police, from memory, but up well north of Taree, people were saying, I seen it, I know what aircraft wreckage looks like. I've used this example before, and you know, they wanted to check that out and it was checked out. And what I'm saying is, we need to be a little bit more formalised with the approach, and this is what we use. Okay, this is what BWS has come up with, and this is what we use. It's important to note because some people get confused because they don't understand why we're searching here. They don't believe, you know, recently I thought, oh, well, why are you searching here when I've got this object here? Well, show me this object and, you know, we'll have a look if it meets the criteria. So it's important to know what we're thinking, and that's why I've displayed this. Obviously, if it's in all three areas, then we apply, you know, maximum intel and search effort to it. And that's really what the SAREX is here. Okay, because the SARX, we need to search the most probable area. So we search the most probable area. So it meets all three criteria, yes? Bang. But for other activities, we sort of mix it up as required. Yeah? This is the most likely extent and the most probable area zoomed in. This green boundary, the MLE, the most likely extent, we've now cut off the vegetated areas and so the areas that have the human activity. And you can see that red squiggly line is representative of that. It's only a pluck, it's only a rough look-see. And most probable area at the moment. Like I said, it really, for us, practically speaking, extends out here. It's just a limitation of the model with what we can do with it at the moment. We keep extending it. Glenn writes the software for this, and it keeps getting better every year. So I'll try to present it a bit more according to what we're thinking in future years. So search tactics. There was heavy use of contact search. So let's form a line, 5-man teams, off we go. I'm not really for that in this terrain as the only method. I think that there needs to be small recce teams as well as contact searching. So where we know we can move well or high probability areas, sub-theories, we might say, we'll put a contact team in. But the recce teams have proven, I think, fairly well. We did that this SARX this year. We had probably more 3-man or 3-person recce teams than, and we only had 2 contact teams. So I think it worked out well. What comments?
We covered vastly more area with the recce teams than we did with the contact teams. So many times what we were previously covering.
Yep. And I call it a pseudo search area or pseudo area because obviously the contact teams can't cover what a contact team does. Sorry, the recce teams can't search 100% like a contact team can. But what we do is we apply them so that they're actually searching contours. So whereas a 5-man team will just move in this formation and then come back and they'll just cover the whole lot, but they won't do a big area. With a small team, you can get them to do a contour search along a certain contour, get them to move down 200 metres laterally, not elevation-wise, but distance-wise across the surface. And the theory is that there's wreckage patterns, yeah? That we've mapped out 2 aircraft crashes in the Barrington Tops. They had been tampered with, that's the caveat, okay? But the wreckage patterns have been fairly consistent on them down to about 250 to 300 and something metres. So the theory is that as long as these guys are looking, we can cover bigger areas quicker and hopefully intercept those wreckage scatter patterns, but also increase the search rate, because I think you'd agree, particularly where I said you in the areas that you go in, to move a 5-6-man team is just, it's not impossible, but you're really not getting into the coordination effort involved in that is huge. Whereas 3 of you going there talking about your cycling on the weekend or whatever and moving through quite rapidly, yeah? Yeah. So that leaves these areas out. We know that, but you got to do something. We've got a big area to cover. You can see, you cannot, with the information that we have, and I assure you that we've done the best research out there. You just simply cannot come up with a smaller area. So you've got to do something different. You can't do this anymore continually, yeah? So we need to be a bit smart because we've got to spread our assets thinner across the bigger search area, and that's what we're doing now. So we'll keep looking into wreckage scatter patterns and so forth, so next year I'll have a bit of time to actually look at it a bit more formally, but at this stage the information we have is that you should see something, yeah? There should be something. It is steep country, okay? It is steep. The other thing is, because almost every member carries a GPS and a sensitive receiver GPS that works under the canopy, we now have permanent records of this, and we won't lose it this time, okay? Because I'm sticking it on the internet. So, and we're sending it across multiple computers. So as we do it, we're making sure we manage this information correctly. It's logged, it's there for future use. So that way, if we want to come in, we can actually put another contact team in there, right? And say, let's fill it in, if we want to, right? But we probably won't. I think that'll cover most of our areas, and I think that's the method to utilise until it's found. But we will still use these teams. They still are used in the high probability areas. So, you know, in what we think is the radar fade area, for instance, at the moment we've sent a team in and the search tracks look like this. We've gotten about halfway through after last year's SAREX. So their 5 manners are covering that heavily, and that's fine. And it's open country, you know, relatively speaking, so we can do that. But one problem about our search area in general, almost the whole 644 square k's, maybe take the high areas near the Gloucester tops off, so coming down where there's actually nice, quite open woodland, it is scrubby, okay, and it's problematic. It's not like in the Upper Williams and the Upper Allen where it's nice and alpiney and relatively clear. It gets worse as you go down south. Go down in elevation. So that's why these teams again are a preference to what we've been doing for quite some time now. Interestingly, there is evidence in the 81 searches that the bushwalk, our predecessor, or BWRS, but Bushwalker Search and Rescue did use similar tactics. Not so much contouring; they didn't do that, but they sent small recce teams top to bottom. So they just sent them down, bring them back up, down, and that's an intelligent way of doing it. So we're just debriefing a few guys from the 81 search, and they did do that because it was the easiest way to do it, and they did have a lack of guidance actually, you know, in what to do. So big areas, top down, okay. Well, we're changing it a little bit. We're going to run them on the contours, but we're also running people down creek lines to intercept wreckage. So generally speaking, we run people down creeks, and we do that in the recce's in the winter and the autumn. And they go down, we find routes out, safe routes out. That's our job in the winter. We've pretty much done that for our search area. There's a few more to go. So they do that, but they're also clearing those areas. And that way comes SAREX, and we have lots of teams in there. We've got safe routes out, access routes for the ambos to come in and get us out if they need to, all that sort of stuff, but we're also clearing those areas. And we cover spur lines as well. So that's what I mean by loose contour searching. It's just tailored as best we can to say 200 metres if we can, and running those teams across to intercept those wreckage patterns if possible. Okay, search progress. That's Jeff Nelson. He was only 1.5 metres in front of me, I think, when I took that photo. So yeah, that was particularly bad. Not as bad as Liz's experience in the creek to the east, but apparently that was worse than this, was it?
Yeah. That's nothing. That's not violent.
Yeah, he did disappear though once. I did see him.
Only once.
Only once. That's not standard. I wouldn't say that's standard of where we search, but it is prolific enough to cause us grief. Mm-hmm. So when we hit areas like this, what do? We try to attack eventually the low side of it where it is open. So at least if something is in there, we're having a good look on the low side underneath. Obviously we'll still send teams in. BWRS is exactly made for this sort of stuff. So we'll happily go anywhere. We'll happily go anywhere. It's just a balance of what you're getting out of an effort for the time frame that you have. That's the problem, okay? Our guys and girls will happily go through this, but to what end? It's a balance.
Hope for more bushfires.
Well, yeah, I got an advice from several people, several locals, and was it someone else, Mike?
I think you were.
Yeah, that's right. I didn't want to say your name. Yeah, no, a lot of the locals have just sent us emails saying, you know, it should be easy to find your aircraft soon because there's a bushfire, a lightning strike, initiated bushfire in the Gloucester Tops area. This is what we've done in this new area, if you want to call it that. So in 2014, it was really just recce's that went in there and had a look around. We were chasing up some leads of sighting reports and things like that. Applying the RPA, remotely piloted aircraft, to do a few things, mainly in support of sighting report. Then more recce's in 2015, and by 2015 we moved the Cyrex over to the Gloucester River area, and that was the first major activity in that search area. In 2016 we expanded it, the recce ops, so now we've covered most of the major valleys, not all of them, but we're again probing in there, having a look at what's in there, finding those safe routes, and at the same time we're searching. And that supported our big 2016 Cyrex with the techniques that we said we used. And again, I still think it was an appropriate, I think, application of search techniques for our latest Cyrex. I think it went well. Other activity in the area, as I said, to the south, there has been an Army engineer unit that did go in there in 86 or 87. We now have those maps, so that's good. No GPX tracks, but at least we know where they've looked. We were going to go in there anyway, so that's great. Now we'll probably go somewhere else instead, just to balance the probability. For not knowing exactly what they search, but if we have the information, and we've got plenty of other areas, we'll hit them first. There has been activity up to the north in the Kerapit, and it's funny, you talk to people and they only tell you at the last moment. So we've just found out that there has been a bit of activity in the Kerapit off the Gloucester Tops Road, exactly again where we were going to go. So what we're doing is we're holding off on going in those areas, Kerapit side and also in Whispering Gully. We've been holding off until we get more information. We've got plenty of other areas to attack. We'll attack them first. Once we get as much information as we can, which I know we still have a lot more to get on previous searches, then we'll move in and attack the areas that haven't been hashed out. So that's what we're aiming at the moment. That's the search tracks, most of them, since we've been working in the new area. This is quite a zoomed out map, so there's been a fair bit of activity. You can see the recce trips that go in. These were purposely sent in because you can't see on this map, but the contours indicated there were cliff lines. So we sent teams in to see if there were, and they just dropped right over the edge and there weren't, but it was very steep. So then that way we also sussed out some camping spots, forward operating areas, that sort of stuff. You can see the activity down in the Gloucester. We've got a safe route out by the river and also via Sharps Creek. So all these things, again, are vital when you're running a multi-agency big Cyrex, and at the same time we're clearing it. You can see the contact searching that's been occurring in here. So you can see that that's the bigger teams, and the recce teams that have gone in before to map out scope it out. This one was Frank, I think. Frank and, clearing out a valley. We were starting to clear out a valley and ended up in another one, a gully, sorry, that wasn't marked. In fact, I'll get onto that in a moment. We've got better charts now as well, better maps. We'll talk about that in a moment. A lot of these maps, you'll go into these areas going, that looks great, that's a nice flat spur. Not even close. There's just deep gullies and heavily vegetated, makes progress extremely difficult. You can see contact searching in 2015 search, because the 2015 search was pretty much all a contact search arrangement, except for myself and Doug Floyd, who went down here and had a look into one of the creek lines along the spur. The activity will be extended out further north and, like I said, further south when we get more information. So, and there's obviously a bit of activity to do here, but we haven't had the track cleared for access, so we want to make this efficient as possible. And the issue is that a lot of this is overgrown. And it's been hard for national parks to get a dozer through there, so our teams of volunteers have cleared it with chainsaws. So it's a big job, big job, and they've actually managed to get all the way from over there, the head into here, which is quite a significant effort just to guys with chainsaws. So hopefully we can get the dozer support from national parks, but we'll have to wait and see. Once we get that, then that'll open up more areas, but there's no point suffering in transiting crews and moving all, let's just make it easy. Wait, there's plenty of other areas to search. We'll do them first, and then we'll move in and do those areas later.
That fire's now burnt through 73 hectares in today's update.
Okay. Down towards the Kerapit?
I'm not sure which way it's actually spread.
You might need to
with the original.
send a team in shortly.
But it's basically
It's that wall.
this area up here, down to here.
Yeah, I think this is where the most of it's been hit though.
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's where it started, and so it's spread further.
So anyway, they're the GPS tracks that we've got so far for the activity in that area.